The question, how did you go bankrupt, has an infamous answer. Very slowly and then very quickly. Out of essentially nowhere, the oddly named company BYD, which was later shoehorned into the equally weird Build Your Dreams, rose to become the largest EV manufacturer in the world, having overtaken Tesla earlier this year. Their equally oddly named cars, such as the Sea Lion, Dolphin and Shark, have become more common on our roads, being as they are a cheaper EV alternative to a Tesla or a European brand. But the vast majority of BYD's cars, between 80 and 90%, are for the domestic Chinese market, which is currently being flooded with EVs from a multitude of competing brands. These manufacturers are in a brutal price war that it seems that the auto industry is in a collective race to the bottom. Not only that, as was revealed last month, the Chinese auto industry has been engaged in some highly questionable tactics to keep the government subsidies flooding in, including registering unwanted new vehicles to meet targets and incentives and then dumping them overseas as zero-mile used cars. Eventually, this house of cards will collapse, and as news comes in that BYD is scaling back production, is this the first sign of more serious trouble ahead? Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. If you'd like to support this channel and display your anti-EV credentials to your Tesla-owning neighbours at the same time, why not buy some awesome MGUY merchandise, like this mug, this baseball cap, or this t-shirt? Each high-quality item sports the MGUY No EVs sign, and they're all made to order, perfect for irritating the hell out of your local EV zealots. Visit store.mguy.tv or click the link in the description to check out the full range of products. And of course, you can always just buy me a coffee. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Before we get on to the BYD story, the zero-mile used car scam has been very thoroughly investigated by Reuters, and the results are staggering. This scam doesn't apply solely to EVs, and the poor quality Chinese combustion cars are involved as well. But it reveals that this practice goes all the way to the rotten core of the auto market in China. Exclusive: China auto industry inflates sales by exporting new cars as used. China's auto industry has inflated car sales for years through a burgeoning government-backed grey market that registers new cars right off the assembly line and then ships them overseas as used vehicles. These so-called zero-mileage cars have never been driven, but they are being exported as used to markets like Russia, Central Asia and the Middle East, allowing Chinese automakers to show growth and to dispose of cars that it will be difficult to sell domestically, according to a Reuters review of government documents and interviews with 5 auto dealers and car traders. This is the outcome of an almost 4-year price war that has made companies desperate to book any sales possible, said Tu Li, Michigan-based founder of consultancy Sino Auto Insights. The practice only gained national attention after the boss of Chinese automaker Great Wall Motor criticized the sale of zero-mileage used cars within China in May. On June the 10th, the People's Daily newspaper condemned the sale of zero-mileage used cars domestically. The paper, which often signals the positions of China's top Communist Party leaders, blamed these fake used cars for driving down prices amid a withering domestic price war and called for tough regulatory action to restore order. But the export and sale of fake used cars is actively encouraged by regional governments in China, according to a Reuters review of state media reports and government documents. Local governments have embraced the practice as vital to meet ambitious targets for economic growth set by Beijing, according to a Reuters review of local policy documents and state media articles. Reuters has identified 20 local governments in China, including major export hubs like Guangdong and Sichuan, that have described their support for the export of zero-mileage used cars in publicly available government documents. The tactics include creating extra licenses for the export of zero-mileage used cars, fast-tracking tax rebate claims, investing in export infrastructure, and funding networking events to encourage zero-mileage used car exports, the government documents showed. The zero-mileage used car export market works like this. As a fresh car emerges from the assembly line, an exporter buys the car either directly from the automaker or from a dealer, registers it with a Chinese license plate, and then immediately marks it as a second-hand car for shipping abroad. Along the way, the automaker books the car as sold and logs the revenue. Well, it's a long and interesting article which I have linked in the description below, so go and have a read for yourself. But here we have a domestic car market that is on the point of implosion due to massive inventory levels and slowing sales, combined with a general slowdown in the interest in EVs globally. When the evangelists bang on about how the global EV market is growing by some ridiculous figure every year, almost all of that increase is contributed by China. The rest of the world is barely moving the needle by comparison. So if BYD has built its business model on continuing domestic sales and a rapidly growing export business, it's a very bad sign that it's having to slow production. Exclusive: BYD slows production, delays capacity expansion at China factories, sources say. Chinese electric vehicle champion BYD has slowed its production and expansion pace in recent months by reducing shifts at some factories in China and delaying plans to add new production lines, said two people with knowledge of the matter. The decisions are a sign that BYD's robust sales growth over the past couple of years that drove it to overtake Tesla as the world's largest EV maker could slow, as it grapples with rising inventory even after offering deep price cuts in China's cutthroat auto market. BYD has cancelled night shifts and reduced output by at least a third of the capacity at some of its factories, said the sources who declined to be named because the matter is private. These previously reported measures were imposed on at least 4 factories, and BYD had also suspended some plans to set up new production lines, one of the people said. BYD, which sold 4.27 million cars last year, mostly in China, has at least 7 car factories in the country, and it has targeted a near 30% rise in sales to 5.5 million this year. Reuters was not able to identify the exact scale of the production reduction and expansion suspension, nor to ascertain how long these measures may last. One of the sources said the moves were aimed at saving costs, while the other said they were imposed after sales failed to meet targets. A survey conducted by the China Automotive Dealer Association in May found that BYD dealers held an average inventory of 3.21 months, the highest among all brands in China, whereas the inventory level industry-wide was at 1.38 months. A large BYD dealer in the eastern province of Shandong has gone out of business, with at least 20 of its stores found to be deserted or shut, government-owned media reported last month. Well, you'd think this kind of growth could not continue indefinitely. Of course, the EV business model is more lucrative since these cars are essentially disposable, and buyers are upgrading far more quickly than if they had bought a petrol or diesel car, which in itself is a scandalous waste of precious resources when you consider that recycling of EV batteries is barely happening at all. All those millions of cars worth of rare earth minerals that are just abandoned or sent to landfill. Hardly the circular economy that EVs are supposed to support. I think it's unlikely that BYD will be filing for bankruptcy anytime soon, but there will be dozens of other brands in China that will, as the inevitable consolidation takes place. But it's another sign that when you apply government incentives and subsidies to a market, you will invariably end up with sharp practices and dodgy dealing. It's happening here in Australia and in the UK and Europe, with EV mandates and emissions regulations, but it's just on a different scale in China. And it's also a sign that no matter how many subsidies and incentives you offer, it will always be the market that wins out in the end. Thanks very much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any tips or stories, go there. If you'd like to watch another video, go there. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, go there. And please subscribe to the channel.